Welcome to the All In Podcast, the show that explores how the top real estate entrepreneurs have gone all in on their businesses. I'm your host, David Morse, with my co-host, Joe Quattrucci, and I invite you to come along with us as we explore the stories of the most elite professionals in the game today to learn how they went all in and how you and I can do the same. So I just have to ask, are you all in? Hey, All In listeners, on today's episode, we're talking with Renee White out of California. Renee runs a $200 million team, and she found her way into real estate after a profession that, for whatever reason, I think is really, really funny. And you're going to hear about that. Joe, what else should our listeners be picking up on today?
Yeah, at one point in the conversation, Renee said that she was far more interested in growing than being in control. And that's sort of the theme throughout today's call. And so as our listeners, as you go into this conversation, ask yourself, are you more interested in growth or more interested in control over your business, and what some of those sacrifices and successes may look like as they begin to unfold?
Yeah, totally. This is a great conversation on leverage. You're going to hear all of it right after a word from one of our sponsors. Hey guys, you know that one of the things that Joe and I are most passionate about is investing in real estate. And we're passionate about it because not enough agents invest in the asset class that they know. But how do you get started? That's where Roofstock comes in. Roofstock is the #1 marketplace for buying and selling single-family rental homes with listings in over 40 markets across the U.S. Their marketplace empowers everyday investors, new or seasoned, to own cash or flowing income properties and build wealth through real estate. Get started on their website today by going to aipodcast.co/roofstock. That's aipodcast.co/roofstock to begin your investing journey today. So Renee, take us back before real estate. What were you doing and how did you get into this industry?
I started way back when I was doing graphic design, and I went to school for graphic design and production artist, multimedia. And so I really had a passion for what I understand was marketing. So, but I loved the design of it. I loved all of those things. And then I worked for somebody who did romance author websites. And so
romance,
she had
I'm
built a
sorry.
team and
romance author websites? Like romance novels?
Yes. Romance
That's hilarious.
novels. Yes.
David needs to know more about this.
I know, right? It actually gets even better. Her sister is a romance author, and she is her sister wrote the Bridgerton series that you see on TV.
Oh,
and
I'm
so
familiar.
Way back when, almost 20 years ago. Yeah, and most people are now, right? But so I would do the production artist part of that for that. So, notepads, all the website, all the graphics, all the things, all of that. So, but I like to say that I talk too much. Exactly, Excel. Nobody was paying me for talking.
All right, interesting. So you're doing the graphic artist stuff, and then just one day, were you drawing a picture for a real estate agent, or what? What were you doing? How did you find real estate?
My friend was in real estate, and she kept trying to get me into real estate, and I kept saying, "Oh, no, I'm not going to do that. That's I'm an artist. I'm doing this path that I've so dedicated myself to doing." And so, but she just kept coming back with, having money, having freedom, having a lot of different things. And so finally, and it just, I wasn't great at doing what I was doing either. I have to say that I wasn't excelling there. So I said, okay, I'll try it. And it was the best thing. I mean, I knew in first open house, I knew that this was the right path for me.
So Renee, talk to us about that first year in real estate. What did that look like? And how did sort of things evolve from that point moving forward?
And so I started as a buyer's agent. And so my friend who got me into the business was a buyer's agent as well. And so I really gravitated to it. I really liked that it was one part of the job. I knew enough about real estate to know that it was a lot. It was a there was a lot of things. And so I really liked that it was this one part of the job, and that a lot of the other things were going to be figured out for me in the beginning, from marketing to contract handling to whatever that was. And somebody was going to be my mentor through that. So I started as a buyer's agent, and I loved being a buyer's agent. I left being a buyer's agent was because the market changed.
So why was it so important for you to focus just on one thing? I mean, did just bring us into that? Why was it important to focus on one thing?
I think because I didn't know anything about it. I felt like I didn't know there were so many pieces that I could see to real estate. And I think that it was just really important to me to not feel like I was swimming, and so I could see this, I could see this very immediately, that buyers wanted help. I could give them the help, and I could do that part of it. So I just didn't want that. I don't like not knowing what I'm doing. And so I could see that part of that job that felt like it was super focused on that. And so I just liked that piece. I didn't need to be all of the things to start.
There's something to be said there about really narrowing one's focus to identify the top priorities and become the master at something instead of sort of dabbling in everything, and something to say about the confidence that gives you to be able to go out there and do it with some integrity and to continue moving forward. So that's something definitely for our listeners to consider as they're bringing on their own agents.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I think it's important, and I think it makes you that expert in the one area, and that makes you hugely valuable both to the team that you're on and to your clients, because you can say, I am that buyer's specialist. So you're working as a buyer's agent. You're getting really, really good at it. What came next?
The market changed. So I started in 2004, a couple years into it. The team I was on didn't need 2 buyer's agents. And so I was like, I got to figure this out. She didn't need me anymore. So I had to go on my own. I was forced to go on my own. But what I recognized right away is I liked being a part of something. I liked being, I didn't want to do this all by myself. And I quickly saw so the only way to do that was to grow my own team. At that time, I wasn't going to go join another team. And so, because honestly, nobody needed me, but I didn't want to I wanted to grow my own. I am a high DI, but I really do feel like I would have been a buyer's agent for longer. I wasn't the passion of I needed to be in charge at the time. I just really was led by I have to figure this out. So I had to go figure it out. And so I quickly got an administrative assistant. So I started doing both sides, right? Buyer's agent and listings. I was getting listings and I needed assistant. And so I hired a part-time assistant to start.
So take us into that first hire. So many people are scared to make that first hire. And for you, it sounds like it was born less out of, I have so much business, I need help, and more out of, I don't want to do this alone. I need to do this together with other people. Is that a fair assessment?
It's pretty fair. I had an REO account that I got. And so I did need the help some, but I also did like doing it with somebody. I liked having that camaraderie of it. And so, and I was very fortunate that I really liked working with the person that I had hired, who's still working with me today. So that didn't hurt either. So
obviously something has gone right if she's still working with you after all these years. What do you think it was at the beginning of the relationship that set you up for success to be in business so long with her?
She is very futuristic. So she always has to know what's next. What are we growing? What are we doing? And that is probably my middle name, is what's next. I always have to be growing as well. So we both really like that about each other, that we're always growing and thinking what's next. How can we be better? How can we do whatever it is? How can we get more business? Whatever that is. So it was a natural fit. She started as an agent the same time I did, but ended up being more in the administrative path of this. So a passion for real estate that had very much the same futuristic goals that I did.
And as David mentioned a moment ago, sometimes making that first hire can be sort of a scary and intimidating process. If you don't mind, what's one thing that you would have done differently, or maybe a mistake you made, or something you learned through hiring that first administrative assistant?
That's an easy one, actually. So I had a part-time assistant. So I hired her part-time. I shared her with another agent. And I thought, well, the next step is a buyer's agent. Well, my biggest mistake, and it was hiring a buyer's agent. I was not leveraged enough to deserve, or I was doing such a disservice to that buyer's agent. I had a lot of internet leads as well at the time, and so I thought, well, I felt like I didn't have enough of me, but really, what I didn't have enough is leverage. And so,
Tell me,
go ahead.
No, please continue.
Yeah, this just is the, I should have had a full-time assistant first. And even hindsight from now, the way I like to teach it is you probably could even have a second or third assistant before you even really need a buyer's agent, because I didn't have enough business to support them.
So when you say you weren't leveraged enough to really deserve a buyer's agent, tell us a little bit more specifically, what does that mean to be more leveraged to get to the point of then needing that buyer's agent?
Well, so if I'd had a full-time assistant, those buyers that I thought I didn't have time for could have been could have set my appointments up, could have pre-started all the contracts for me. So many things on those buyers can be leveraged out. Yes, she couldn't have shown the houses for me, but that was about it, really. So, you could have started the contract, sent out the contract, do all those. I mean, she even made the maps later on, made the maps of, like, because that's what we did back then, is make maps of my route, called and made all the appointments to see the houses. So many things could have been leveraged out, but still I was doing so much of the administrative parts of the buyers. And I could have, I think, well done another probably 20 buyers without needing a buyer's agent to do those.
Renee, I really loved how you put that when you said I was not leveraged enough to deserve a buyer's agent. I've been, like, as you're going through that, I've just been sitting here thinking specifically about that word deserve and how team focused that is, because, I think a lot of times when we're building a team, we're thinking about us, and you don't deserve a buyer's agent if you're not ready. I mean, I'm still trying to work out in my head why you use that word, deserve. Could you tell me more about why?
I was a buyer's agent. I'm very sensitive to them.
Okay.
I am very sensitive to when you take on a buyer's agent, you're taking on a big responsibility, and you want to be able to have enough business for them. You want to be able to train them. You want to be able to focus and have all the things, and that would be that they're trusting you to have all of this. And so I didn't have all that figured out enough for that person. And so because I was a buyer's agent, I do feel very sensitive to how they're treated. Not that I was mistreated in any way, but I just feel like you've got to have to be ready for one. And so when I see agents so quickly take one on and then be frustrated with them, it's probably sometimes we got to point the finger back at us and see if we're ready for one yet.
I love that. It's so others focused in team building, which means you from the get-go, from day one, you're focused on making sure that you're providing that person enough value so that they can achieve their goals. And I think our listeners need to really hear what you just said there over the last couple minutes about not being leveraged enough, not deserving it, and how you think through it. Really, really good stuff. So you bring on a part-time assistant, you try to bring on the buyer's agent, you're like, whoa, this isn't working. So what came next? Because, we're not there yet in your story, but your team is composed of a very, very leveraged staff. When you look at the ratio of sales to support. And so keep bringing us through this journey of leverage.
So at each piece, I leveraged off, I always had a transaction coordinator. So I did just say I made a mistake one summer and did my own transactions, and then quickly went, oh, that was not a good piece of my leverage. And now that I had a transaction coordinator, which I just stopped using the in-office transaction coordinator. So I think you can go really far with the in-office one as well. So in-office transaction coordinator, assistant. And then my next piece was an ISA. And so I saw some of this. I had a lot of online leads. I loved online leads. I was so passionate and still am passionate because if you work them right, they're a great source. And so if you can find the right source, you can really make that work very well for you. And so I thought, I'm spending so much time lead generating, and I saw people back east on KW using these ISAs. And then I saw that show American Pickers, and they had basically an ISA back there, and they were sending out, going out and driving around picking, and the person back at the office was telling them where to go and making appointments for them. I'm like, that's all I need. I need somebody just to answer the phone and set some of these appointments and help me with this. So my second leverage was an ISA.
Was there any apprehension to begin rehiring people after the first buyer agent didn't work out the way you wanted it to? Or how did you get over that mentally to where you were still able to move forward and eventually hire more people? My hindsight, and was probably more in hindsight. I kept going. There were definitely chunks where I did not have a buyer's agent, but my understanding and how much of I did a disservice to that first one, I'm going to tell you, it wasn't at the very beginning. I mean, it was more in a couple of years that I was like, well, that was not probably the greatest, so I can't tell you I was brilliant in the moment. But it did. So once I had the full-time assistant, because after the buyer's agent didn't work out, I did realize, okay, I need a full-time assistant here. Then able to work more with the buyers. And then I was tapping out in some way. So I had maybe somebody who helped me, or maybe I had another buyer's agent. But I had, for a period of time, I had an assistant and an ISA and myself. And it was a good long while, because again, they could go pretty darn far with that. Now I had somebody now I was giving myself back, a couple hours a day, probably lead generating 2 to 3 hours a day. Now I had that time back. So now all of a sudden I have more time for buyers. So that next piece of having, and that my ISA was, I think, like 3/4 time. So 30 hours a week. Just helping me answer the phone, helping me go through those, helping me follow up, and helping all of those things was really a great next piece for me.
So Renee, how, if you can remember, like, about how many transactions do you think you were doing when it was you, the assistant, and the ISA?
I think around 50, maybe. I clearly remembered going around 20, 25 with the assistant, and maybe even more. But then I feel like it was like 50 something, 60, kind of getting in there.
Okay. I'm curious to know more about this ISA leverage, because we hear some success stories where people are using ISAs at a super high level, and then we hear other stories where ISAs seem to not work out, or they're running through several different people and they're just not gaining traction. What have you learned working with ISAs to make them most productive?
Well, my first one had already done the job. So that was the good part of it. She had done it in Washington and literally told me what to do. She said, here's what you do. You go get another phone, you get me a laptop, and you get a second phone number, and you start directing most of this stuff to the second phone number. And so I'm really good at following direction like that. If you've already figured it out and done it, that's what I did. So I did that. I went back and forth of having them inside the office and outside the office. Both of mine now are virtual assistants. But at the time, I really started wanting somebody really inside the office. That's what I was really looking for. Because I wanted to know they were bored a little, really, I think sometimes where the ISAs is, they're just taking off the top. And so I really wanted them to have a little more kind of boredom and I wanted to see them. I wanted to know they were sitting at the desk and really trying to work those leads. So I have went back and forth of having them inside and outside virtual assistants, but then honestly, it's more affordable to have outside virtual assistants.
I love the message there about, taking somebody's advice who's already done it, and just how humble you are to be able to model really somebody else and not to have to reinvent the wheel. And I think that's super important. Whatever it is that we're doing as business owners, there's probably somebody out there that's already done it at a super high level. And so rather than stumbling forward for months or years trying to figure it out, go figure out what that person did, take their advice, and then integrate it at a super high level.
I like watching somebody else do it.
Yeah, I think that's really neat. One of Joe and my mentors tells a story all the time of hiring his first director of operations, and on the very first day, the director of operations basically asked, "How am I going to get paid?" And this guy said, "I don't know. That's your job. You go figure that out." And he says, "I am hiring you to go figure out payroll." And I think there's just so much wisdom in that, between you saying, I follow directions really good, and him going out and getting someone who is proficient at that and saying, hey, I'm hiring you because this is an area of weakness that you are meant to come into this organization and strengthen. That's how we multiply the force of our organization. That's how we can then be futuristic and say, what's next? Where do we go from here? So you're working with this ISA, and you've mentioned online leads a couple of times. I want to talk to you a little bit about the online leads piece. Were you feeding your ISA, were these like through, Facebook, social media, with realtor.com, Zillow? I'm not so much concerned about the exact source, but tell us a little bit about like the type of lead and what you've found in online lead gen and follow up.
So I was doing Google AdWords. And there was a couple of agents that had done one of these, what we're all using now, like the syncs and all of these. They had built this many years ago, and so they were teaching us, and it was $50 a month for this Sphere Builder, and they taught us how to put AdWords into there. And I thought, well, again, I didn't really feel like I had anybody to call as a new agent, so I went and said, I'm going to try and about $500 a month and put this and do this. And so I did Google AdWords to start. And they were an immediate success for me because they registered, I'd call them. And then if they said, call me back later, I put it in my calendar and called them later. And so it gave me something to do. I just really liked them. And then a little bit, then I started doing Zillow. And I really loved when Zillow was wrong. I don't know if anybody was back then. Zillow used to have all the wrong information. Houses would be already sold. They would, still be active. We loved it because then we could redirect them. They'd call off a sold house, and I'd say, "Oh, isn't Zillow horrible? Let me change that. Let me get you in one that's actually." So our scripts were down for how bad Zillow was. So between those two things, we did a lot with that. So that was two, and then I had started a small farm, and then I was directing the farm there. Because of what I was paying, though, I wasn't directing everything through the ISA. And so that is where I made changes, is because I was honestly paying too much in our area for what that ISA was doing. And so, and it made me hesitant to put everything there through them. And so what I learned is don't be hesitant. Everything now goes through the ISA. Nothing has my own phone number on it. And I'll even retro give them. I'll get a lead from somebody and I'll even still give it to the ISA. You manage it, you do it, I'm paying you on it.
How does a high D personality and someone who is a mega agent like yourself, how do you get to a place, Renee, where you're willing to give up control and love leverage? Because so many mega agents' personality, they love control. It sounds like you are naturally a little bit the opposite. I'm sure some of it's a learned behavior, but a little bit the opposite naturally too. If someone came up to you and they're like, hey, I just can't give up control of this, like the phone number, everything's going to the ISA, what would you say to them?
It is trusting the person who is on the other side, but it still makes me squirm. So you're right though, having somebody new in there and them not doing it exactly how I do, it makes me squirm. It does. I don't love it. And so I want to grow more than I want to be in control. So I had to figure out which one it was I wanted because I couldn't keep doing that job. And I honestly, sometimes you just stop enjoying it. It just didn't feel like I wasn't a natural at that piece maybe too. So I like I knew that if you put me in front of people, that's where I shine. I shine meeting you, winning you over, wooing, taking that woo and my competitiveness. That's where I go. That's my best part.
So after this ISA hire, what were the next couple of hires that were made strategically to get you to the point that you're at today?
So then I hired a listing coordinator. So the listing coordinator was the next key big piece. And that was, in our area, pretty much everything is luxury. And so we do a lot of with the houses, which is a lot of prep into the houses. So hiring the listing coordinator was another big key step for me. And basically what that is an assistant, again, to get the houses ready. because my assistant was spending too much time doing that. And so we needed, once I got to a certain point, I needed to split that off.
So today you're doing you're approaching $200 million in volume, and your team is composed of yourself, and correct me if I'm wrong, Renee, but I believe it's yourself, 3 buyer's agents, and 8 administrative staff. Is that correct?
It is, yes.
So again, the ratio there is kind of interesting, right? Because I think a lot of people are like, all right, I made my 2 support hires. I'm following, if you're following the MREA model or whatever, I made my two hires there. What is it that is so important about the support and administrative aspect to you that you would go and kind of equalize the ratios or even have even more support staff?
Maybe it's that control piece, because I want things done as right as they can be. There's so many details here. And so half of those are virtual assistants. And so there's 2 things that allow me to do that. One is because they're virtual, I can hire more of those. It's into my ratio of maybe, I think it's 3 to 1 of having somebody here. And then it just, I don't even know where I was going to go with that, but it's a 50-50. So it just allows me to go through, it allows me to have more support for what those are. So I like having things done right. And so as we grow, each of those virtual assistants help the main person that's here. So the listing coordinator has 2 virtual assistants that help them because there's so many details that need to be done.
Very cool. So let's talk for a minute about virtual assistant versus assistants that are local. Because here's another thing: when I'm talking to our top teams or those who are developing teams, and they say, David, what do you think about virtual assistants? Right? I think very similar to what Joe said earlier about ISAs. We've seen people work extremely well with VAs, and we see others who have not. What is key to making sure that you are working with your VA and maximizing that relationship?
Training. That's the hard part. We're literally doing it today. We had to block off 2 hours for our new person to, you have to learn how to train without having somebody hip to hip with you. And we again think, oh, they're just going to figure it out, but you've got to slow down for so many of those things and train them. So again, it comes back and points at us because we're not willing to slow down enough as agents to train those people. So I was fortunate enough to have a really great, again, that my first hire of Darlene. So she had to figure out how do I train this person who I don't see? And so we did the first one we hired, we still have today. So, and I think that's super unusual. I mean, I know that is. It's just, we just got lucky on that first part, but we're still, I bet you Kel has more bandwidth because we just need to train him more. So it's the training. It's really being and finding the right tools. We use Loom, I think, is what we're using now. We're constantly making videos to share and being able to train them and just trying to and not making it perfect. So we thought these videos had to be perfect. They don't have to be perfect. They just need to know how to do the job and move on.
One of the distinctions I like to make around leverage is the difference between leverage and delegation. And I say that because you're talking about training your VAs, and I'm wondering, are you at a point where your VAs are truly leveraged, where they can they understand the big picture enough, the vision enough, and how things overlap to where they can sort of make some daily decisions, versus delegation, which is, I can do a checklist of A, B, C, but anything outside of those parameters, I don't know what to do. And so talk to me a little bit about that, the difference on how that shows up in your team.
So yeah, I think there is. That's a really good distinction I didn't really think about before. So there is that, I think some of them they can only do what's right in front of them. That's all they can do. But they can't do anything that's I think my ISAs can kind of think outside the box and kind of, have more movement inside of there, but, maybe some of the others can't because they can only do what's in front of them. They can't go, I'm going to think of a new way to do something or have some of those. So their role is kind of limited in some ways. There's only so much they can do because they're not here. So they don't get to see that day to day of what we're doing. They don't get to don't see the nuances to be able to maybe make some bigger decisions for us. But they understand that it's sometimes it's really finite things that they're doing. They're just very small things that we never get to.
So in a way, it's like your listing coordinator could be described as leverage because they truly can act and make decisions on their own. And your listing coordinator's leverage is really more delegation through a VA in a sense.
Yes, there you go. That's a great way to put it. So we hired the second one, if for her is just a scheduler. So I am the only listing agent on the team. And so I want to hire somebody else, and this listing agent can't take on any more for scheduling. And I don't want that experience for those clients to be any different. So we hired another virtual assistant just to be a scheduler. There's going to do other things, but right now that's all they do is just schedule.
On that note, I'm curious to know what you believe your next hire is going to be based on the way that your business is growing.
So, well, we're down a marketing person. And so that's the next, it's listing agents. It's agents that I am. So like you said, you can see I'm so administrative heavy. It is more agents on the team. If we want to do 250 next year, I can see it coming. But I do need, I'm tapping out. I gotta have help.
Yeah, definitely. I'm going to step back to the VA for just a second too, because and this is a little selfish. I have VAs and they're phenomenal. I'm curious, to have a VA that stays with you that long, there has to be some type of connection there. I mean, how are you purposeful about making sure that they're connected to the vision and culture of your team? Do you have any words of wisdom around that?
Absolutely. Every time we think we're doing a good job and we add something else though to we've been not doing one-on-ones maybe with Kel or do something else. And then we add this piece and he's so grateful for it. He's like, oh, I feel, but Kel from day one though has made himself always, all of his talk was always team focused. We just always made sure that he was part of the team. When we always counted him. We always said he was on every team meeting. He was always part of everything. We didn't just kind of put him in the corner and go, oh yeah, what about him? So our language was a lot about being inclusive with all those. So, and one of my ISAs, I think has been here maybe 3 years plus. And in the very beginning, it was hard to train her. An ISA from the Philippines was, oh my gosh, it was rough. But I mean, we just had to stick with it. It was knowing when it was us or them, there was definitely a lot of them, but this one was us, and just keeping with her. And she's between the two of them, they're some of our most dedicated people we've had in the longest term.
I feel like the big takeaway there is treat your virtual assistants just like any other member of your team. Get to know who they are and what they're passionate about. Pour into them training-wise, and they will not only stick around for a long period of time, but they'll perform for you at a much higher level.
Yep, you got it.
I love our VAs. Shout out to our VAs.
Absolutely.
You hear this.
So much.
So Renee, you're obviously very much into leverage, and when you are building a team, you're hiring a lot of people. And I've heard you say a couple words that aren't always used in conversation. So I actually kind of have a curveball question for you. You've used the word futuristic a few times, and also woo. When you hire, are you leaning on the book Strengths Finders at all, or is that just
yeah, it is
coincidence?
I love that one. I took it a long time ago, but I do. I just I think if I'd have done that, when I was 20 something years old, where would I be? And maybe I don't know, I'd be in charge of the world. But I didn't understand that. I was fighting against my natural strengths, and when you look at what my natural strengths are in some of the jobs like the graphic design, what I was doing, I mean, I wasn't probably a great employee. I just wasn't my forte. It just wasn't in my wheelhouse to do some of those things. So I love that. And we love relating the team to, and we have everybody who is even, before we even hire them, we have them take that assessment. So we just want to know how you're going to fit in and what that looks like. Our new favorite one is responsibility. And so our assistant we just hired, it has responsibility. And so does Darlene, who's my operations person. And that is my favorite one. I mean, they really are responsible. They wanted ownership of the job and everything that they're having. So, and then she has futuristic in her as well. And that is, I have to enjoy talking to you every day if you're my assistant. And so maybe not having a couple of those things, we're not going to enjoy each other. I'm constantly looking to say what's next. And my assistant's like, I don't want any more. It's not going to be a great fit for us. So I'm looking at that as that last piece of fit for us to use that.
That's fantastic. I was really curious, and I wanted to ask that this entire time. Hey, such good information, really good meat for our audience on leverage. And we could talk more about it, but I'm going to transition us into the last segment of our show, which is 3, 2, 1 action. Our listeners know it well, of course. It's the same 3 questions that we ask every single guest. You've kind of been like, we kept you in the dark a little bit. Didn't give you any forewarning. Like, you ready to be on the spot?
All right,
here we go. Joe?
Renee, who's the one person that has had the biggest impact on your business and why?
Well, I would say it's just Keller Williams. I know that feels like so, but it's all the training. It's everybody there at Keller Williams I say I owe all my success to Keller Williams. So I just followed everything that they said to do, and all the models and all the systems and all the classes and all of that. So like, I want to maybe pick Bev Steiner, who's our the owner, or this person or that person, but it was all encompassing, if I had gone to any other company, it would not be the same.
That's awesome. Love it. Question number 2, what's the most influential book on your business?
So it sounds like I'm a Keller Williams disciple as the MREA model. I mean, that's all I'm doing. It just seems so corny, but that is one. That's just everybody asks me, they think I'm doing something like there's some secret, or I've got this secret website I'm getting my leads from, or I'm doing this, but it's just still the same thing. I do the same thing every day out of that book, and I just keep following what's in there. And every time we think we may be out of model, like with that ISA or something, we look back and they just called it a telemarketer before. So it's the red book.
Well, there's nothing to feel corny about there. That's probably that's definitely the most common answer we get around the book. And I love how you say you just do the same things every day, and it doesn't have to be new and creative. It's following the model. So that's a perfect answer. I love that. The last rapid fire question we have for you today, Renee, is, as you know, this is the All In Podcast, where we encourage our listeners to take what they've heard today and go put it into use. So what action item do you suggest to our listeners to begin to move the needle forward in their businesses?
I think moving the needle forward is, I guess just looking back, what you can leverage off. I mean, what are you doing every day that you can just leverage off, that this is not your best, highest of use, and just going back and going, what can I do? And who else can take that from me that is better at it than me? Or even if there's not that person, can a virtual assistant do it? So something like that. I mean, whatever it is, just what can you leverage off today?
And that's such a good answer, because it doesn't have to be even business, right? It's like we talk about getting someone to mow your lawn is leverage, and people sometimes don't have that broad a view of leverage. And so I think that is a great answer for our listeners to go out, sit down. What are you doing today that you should not be doing? As Renee said, what is not the highest and best use of your time? Renee, thank you so much for spending some of your time with us. I know our listeners are going to want to learn more about you, connect with you. Where's the best place for them to find more of your information and content?
So if you just go to reneewhiteteam.com, there's all my information is right there. You can even schedule 15 minutes with me. There's a self-scheduling. I say I'll talk to anybody almost. My answer is always I'll give anybody a few minutes of my time to say, that's how I learn and I grow, and I'll talk to anybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much for spending time with us. Listeners, thank you for spending your day with us as well, hearing from Renee. I know you got tons of value out of it. If you haven't left a rating or review on Apple, that's how Joe and I are able to continue to bring this content to you each and every week. And so, Renee, thank you so much. We look forward to connecting with you soon. And listeners, go out and play all in. Man, Joe, for Renee's first ever podcast interview, I thought she was pretty polished and did a pretty good job.
Yeah, she did a great job.
There was so much value that she distilled down, and things that were like really, really tangible, from like the types of leads to ISA, VA. I mean, just a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I said this during the conversation. I really appreciate her perspective around modeling other people. And that's one of the surest and fastest ways to success, is to go find people that are doing what you're doing and implement it and integrate it in your own business in the same way. We don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? We want to build a foundation built on a model. And then once you have that foundation, you can allow yourself to have some creativity, but really, what you don't want to do is start getting super creative with your business approach before you have that revenue and that consistency and that strong foundation to build off of.
Yeah, that phrase that she used, I'm really good at following directions, I think is so important as a leader of a business. So really good stuff there. Really great conversation with Renee. Guys, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the All In Podcast. Leave us a rating and review. Make sure that you've subscribed to us on your platform of choice. And we'll see you here next week for another episode of the All In Podcast.
Hey guys, thanks for listening to this episode of the All In Podcast. We want to invite you to find all of today's resources from our show page at aipodcast.co. We also ask that you take just 1 minute to leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you get your podcast. This is how we grow and how we're able to bring you the best content each and every week. Now go play all in.